wanted to do just a quick midweek update to sort of clarify some of the things I said this past Sunday on April 3rd. I'm going to try to focus on just a couple of topics here in this update, specifically some of the comments made at the World Government Summit in Dubai on March 29th mainly, and some other people and some other things that are related to that, and then take a brief look at Yuval Noah Harari, the author of a couple books called Homo Deus and Sapiens, who seems to be the philosophical basis behind a lot of what the World Economic Forum and others are doing right now. And I think you'll see there's some pretty shocking things that I have, clips that I've pulled out from him from a number of years ago. I've been talking about Harari for at least 4 years now. I think the first clips I played of him were from the 2018 Davos World Economic Forum meeting. And as I dig further into it, I'm more and more concerned, as are a lot of others. So I think that's a pretty important part of this. So I'm going to play a lot of clips today in this update, but I want you to see what the people that are running things, and when they go to their big meetings, what they're talking about and how they're covering these things. So as you know, these are some of the channels we're on. I talk each week about the convergence of events that are happening, that things seem to be happening very, very quickly. I use this grid, as I've mentioned many, many times before, that as we get closer to the end, we'll see things that are talked about in the prophetic scriptures. They'll be accelerating. They'll be converging. But there's also a logistics aspect to how these prophecies come about. And I think you'll see some of the foundations of that being made, and then understanding. We'll know, I think, better as we get closer. We'll have a clearer vision of what is actually happening and going on. And this is consistent with what it says in Daniel chapter 12, verse 8, 9, and 10. And I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the end of time. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So the first thing I want to take a look at is the World Government Summit that took place a week ago in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. It was a collection of a 3-day conference. They had a lot of different sessions. So I'm going to play a little bit of what I played on Sunday because I want to put it into context. So here's the first video that's sort of one of the World Government Summit promo videos. It's easy to talk about this, by the way, and say the World Economic Forum, because you'll see that a lot of the same people are involved in the World Government Summit that are involved in the Davos World Economic Forum meetings. And so there's a real synergy there, of course, and they are the same people, as a matter of fact. So here's a promo video about the World Government Summit.
The world as we know it has changed. Altering our current path to the future requires a strong and proactive leadership. The global economy is in transition. Now is the time to come together as governments, as nations, as people. Putting nature at the heart of how we innovate will make us ready for the final frontier. Putting people at the heart of robotics will create a better tomorrow between AI and society. The World Government Summit will enable nations to come together and take accountability.
We cannot continue to destroy our environment.
We are here to shape the future.
Build a better tomorrow by taking action here and now.
Now, I'm also going to tell you that there's another aspect of this that I think is related to Bible prophecy, which is the Abraham Accords, because, of course, this is Dubai, and they're one of the they were the first signatory to the Abraham Accords back in 2020 during the Trump administration, a deal that was brokered by Jared Kushner and others. And I think that that's very significant. And I think one of the most significant aspects of that, even more so than who's involved in that, and I'm going to talk more about that Sunday, some of the things that are going on with regard to that, but is the economic aspect. And we know that as this final kingdom empire comes about, there's going to be a big economic component to it. And we talk a lot about that. That comes from Revelation 13 and some other passages. So here's another promo video to show how these things that people come up with, these ideas like the metaverse, are also related to things that are going on at the World Government Summit. That's the name they chose, not me.
What is the metaverse?
Companies are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the vision of the metaverse.
Bitcoins were created in 2009.
Facebook has acquired Oculus VR for $2 billion.
Fortnite, it's more than just a game, it is a pop culture phenomenon.
Microsoft Mesh connects the physical and the digital worlds, allowing us to transcend the traditional boundaries of space and time.
Our company is now Meta.
By the way, yesterday I was driving out past the Facebook server farms that I refer to a lot. There are now 6 buildings being built or under construction across the street. They're building giant buildings for Google server farms. And then there is also perhaps the biggest distribution trucking building I've ever seen that has the name Amazon on it. So that's about 15, 20 minutes from my house, is just this huge tech center that they're calling the Silicon Heartland. And it's great, it brings jobs and everything in. But understand there's a connection between these people who want to do the world government, data mining, data collection, data storage. As I've said there's 6 enormous buildings that they've built out, or are almost in the process of building the 6th, out on the northeast side of Columbus, Ohio, that just store data. And across the street, there will be Google server farms that just store data. Now, these are bits and bytes of information, but they need a lot of computers to store that and to make the interconnections. So here's an example of how these things are interconnected. This is Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, talking about how some of these things are connected.
As the world fights the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, the most challenging crisis we have faced since the Second World War, we are also seeing another epidemic, a dangerous epidemic of misinformation. Around the world, people are scared, they want to know what to do and where to turn for advice. This is a time for science and solidarity. Yet the global misinfodemic is spreading. Harmful health advice and snake oil solutions are proliferating. Falsehoods are filling the airwaves. Wild conspiracy theories are infecting the internet. Hatred is going viral, stigmatizing and vilifying people and groups. The world must unite against this disease too. And the vaccine is trust. First, trust in science. And I salute the journalists and others fact-checking the mountain of misleading stories and social media posts. Social media companies must do more to root out hate and harmful assertions about COVID-19. Second, trust in institutions, grounded in responsive, responsible, evidence-based governance and leadership. And trust in each other. Mutual respect and upholding human rights must be our compass in navigating this crisis. Together, let's reject the lies and nonsense out there. Today, I'm announcing a new United Nations Communications Response Initiative to flood the internet with facts and science while countering the growing scourge of misinformation, a poison that is putting even more lives at risk. With common cause for common sense and facts, we can defeat COVID-19 and build a healthier, more equitable, just and resilient world.
So you see how this is all connected. So here's the Secretary General of the UN talking about misinformation, which is what our government is putting out these bulletins about fighting misinformation, particularly about this Charlie Victor thing that we've been dealing with. Now, on March 29th, at the session at the World Government Summit, the opening talk was done by Klaus Schwab, the founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum, and here is what he had to say.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to participate for the 8th time at this important meeting, even if only in a virtual way. I would like to express my high respect to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum for having taken the initiative for creating such an important global platform for governments shaping the future. I also want to congratulate Dubai for having organized such a successful World Expo despite all the repercussions of the global pandemic. Last November, in partnership with His Excellency Mohammed Al-Gargawi, we brought together 60 top intellectual thinkers here in Dubai. Thank you to His Excellency for enabling this initiative to define a longer-term narrative to make the world more resilient, more inclusive, and more sustainable. With all the current issues on our agenda, we tend to forget that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which accelerates global change in much more comprehensive and faster ways than the previous 3 revolutions. I'm proud that the government of Dubai has been so foresighted in establishing a Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in cooperation with the World Economic Forum. The objective is to quickly recognize the potential of new technologies, as well as develop the necessary ethical and political frameworks around those new technologies to ensure that those technologies are human-centered and society-oriented. The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions of a dangerous clash between major global powers. History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever. What is also needed is a summit like this one to go beyond crisis management and to look into constructive ways we can build our common future. Our futures are intrinsically connected to one another, as the profound challenges to mankind, such as climate change, are globally interconnected and require collaborative responses. In conclusion, and despite all the challenges, we have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation, and which we can only fulfill through collaboration on a national and on a global level. I wish you an impactful and successful meeting.
And so Schwab is an author of a number of books shaping the future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Then during the midst of the pandemic, he came out with a book called The Great Reset, and immediately everybody said, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory and that type of thing. But then you see all the leaders of the world talking about that, and you're going to see the leaders of the world using sort of the same language in the next few videos that I play. And then you also heard Schwab mention narrative, the great narrative for a better future. So they want to create the story, our future. This is very similar to what the emerging church did. Some of the books of Brian McLaren that talked about narrative. That's the narrative will determine the truth that we're going to see in the future. Back in 2019, Schwab talked at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and this is what he had to say about the Fourth Industrial Revolution at that time.
And now, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is not just a prolongation of this digitalization, it's much more. It's a combination of technologies. It's not just the digital technology. Just think of genetics, think of brain research, and so on. And the power of the Fourth Industrial Revolution comes from the combination of all those technologies. Actually, I was saying it's at the end what the Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
So you're going to, when I play some clips from Yuval Noah Harari, who's sort of the, as I said, the philosophical infrastructure for the World Economic Forum and some of these things that are going on with the development of technology. And I think you'll be fairly shocked as you see some of the earlier things that he had to say back when he first sort of surfaced back about 8 years ago. But you see that this is talking about the fusion of biological and information and data information, because this is all based on artificial intelligence. We're going to build a better humanity. It's just as a preview, Harari talks about having intelligent design and to move along human evolution. Now he's an atheist, he rejects God, and you'll see that when we get to that. But the other thing that happened at this World Government Summit was this session. This is really the only one I'm going to focus on. It was 3 days. A lot of the technological and governmental elites were there to talk about these things. They had panels, they had speeches, they had programs. But this is an interesting program. Becky Anderson at CNN moderated a discussion with Fred Kemp, who's president of the Atlantic Council, Pippa Malmgren, who's an economist and former U.S. presidential advisor. Her father was as well. George Friedman from Geopolitical Futures, and then Dr. Anwar bin Mohammed Gargash, who is a diplomatic advisor to the ruler of the United Arab Emirates. And it's very interesting. United Arab Emirates is very involved in a lot of the technological infrastructure, digital identity, and that sort of thing, digital passports. A lot of that is emanating from the Emirates there, the United Arab Emirates. So here's the opening session of Are You Ready for a New World Order? Now it's interesting, when I think it was Glenn Beck put up videos from this conference, some of the same ones that I'm going to use. He got flagged with you need to take this New World Order thing in context. It might be misinformation. So I'm only going to play for you the words that they say, because we are, and show sort of, I've done a mashup with some other comments from President Biden that he gave, and you can see how the same language is sort of is sort of being peppered throughout all the different discussions. They all use the same ones, mainly New World Order, mainly inflection point. But here's Becky Anderson with her introductory remarks at the Are We Ready for a New World Order session.
Are we ready for a new world order?
And now is the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
Well, the organizers here are nothing if not ambitious. This is, I think you will agree, a daunting subject for discussion at just after 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning here in the relative calm of Expo 2020. But tackle it we must, because I believe what is clear is that we have hit an inflection point.
You know, we are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations.
We are certainly living in a unique age of uncertainty and volatility in global affairs. Whether you are from the global north or the global south, we have all collectively lived through the twilight zone that was the pandemic and the changes to our social, our digital, and our fiscal landscape that COVID-19 wrought. And just as the world re-emerges from the pandemic, we are faced with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which certainly feels like a transformative geopolitical moment. Coming as that does, against a backdrop of great power struggles, the emergence of middle powers, of climate crisis, and cybersecurity challenges, the trend lines certainly seem to indicate a world headed in a disorderly direction. Is the US-led multilateral system created post-World War II to manage international relations so that the world would never again see and experience the same chaos and disorder of a world war?
And now is the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
Is it anything like fit for purpose? And if not, what is the alternative? That is the purpose of this discussion today, so let's get on with it. Are you ready for a new world order?
And that was the sort of the common theme of the session. Now, Pippa Malmgren was also there. She's an economist. She was asked some questions, and she had some comments about the financial aspect of this new world order. And here's what she had to say.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. What we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
So it's interesting that you saw a little pop up there in the video. That's a bill that was introduced into Congress, I believe a week ago Monday, or 2 weeks ago Monday. On March 9th, President Biden put in place an executive order saying we need to study digital money, digital currencies. They're called central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. The problem with these is that they're also being touted as programmable, which means they'll be able to control how you're able to spend your digital money just by the flip of a switch. And this is tied into the social credit system. Fred Kemp, also following the conference for CNBC, wrote an op-ed, "A new world order is emerging and the world is not ready for it." Now, in his session at the, in his comments at this session at the World Government Summit, he had this to say about his mentor and sort of how he was oriented. He's president of the Atlantic Council, and he's talking about now with the conflict between over Ukraine with Russia, the world order is changing, and he says new world order is emerging. The world's not ready for it. I'll read some of his comments from this article, but first, here are some of where he's coming from and how he's thinking. Comments from the World Government Summit by Fred Kemp.
My mentor on issues of world order is Henry Kissinger, so I'll try to channel him, and forgive me, Dr. Kissinger. His answer would be, what do you mean no new world order? We have not had a world order yet. What we've had is we've had a Western order that was imposed on the world. And so the first world order in modern times, or somewhat modern times, was 4 centuries ago with the Treaty of Westphalia, ending a century of conflict, the 30 Years' War. And it wasn't a great moral thrust, it was just recognizing the world as it was. If you look at what we're trying to create right now, we're, I would say, at an inflection point in history, as important as the end of World War I, where we got the effort at world order tragically wrong. We ended up with millions of dead, the Holocaust in World War II.
As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order. And
after World War II, we got more right than wrong with the creation of the International Liberal Order and the United Nations and the Bretton Woods system and the European Coal and Steel Community, NATO, etc. And then the Soviet Union fell. And then the Cold War, we thought it was the end of history. And we thought that everyone could fit into this system that had been created. And it worked for a while, but not everybody came into it. But China grew. China certainly took full advantage of being part of the global system. Russia did not. Russia became more of an outlier. And I think where we are now, and this gets to your question, Becky, of a new world order, is it can go in 2 directions with the war in Ukraine now being a decisive element. Either the jungle is back, as the historian Bob Kagan talks, and that we can go into a darker era, or we could go into an era, because of the advances of science, advances of technology, that could be one of the most prosperous, promising, progressive, enlightened, moderate, modern eras that we've ever faced. And I think we're in a moment where that's being decided, and I think the importance of the Ukraine issue is that it's a fulcrum for this, and how the world manages this and comes out of this is going to have far-reaching consequences that go beyond Ukraine.
So he carried on that theme in his article that he wrote for CNBC a few days later. He referenced this article from The Atlantic written by Michael Schumann, which was actually written the day before they had this session. And this is the opening paragraph. The Russian invasion of Ukraine and a series of COVID-related shutdowns in China, and there are these COVID-related shutdowns in China. Shanghai and Shenzhen have been really pretty much under lockdown for a while. And we don't know what the impact will be on supply chains and that sort of thing, because these are important economic cities today. So it says here, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and a series of COVID-related shutdowns in China do not on the surface appear to have much in common. Yet both are accelerating a shift that is taking the world in a dangerous direction, splitting it into 2 spheres, one centered on Washington and the other on Beijing. So here's some comments from Fred Kemp's article. My conversations in Dubai at the World Government Summit. And they also had a related Atlantic Council's Global Energy Forum there where they had everybody talking about energy, show little enthusiasm or conviction for this bifurcated vision of the future. The Middle Eastern participants have no interest in abandoning relations with China, the leading trade partner for Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, or breaking with Russia, which established itself as a force to be reckoned with when it saved Syrian President Bashar al-Assad through its military intervention in his war. I'm going to close this update with some sort of a preview of Sunday that relate to this Russia involvement in Syria, because I think it's important, and also Iranian involvement in Syria. Kemp continues, beyond that, our Mideast partners have lost confidence in America's commitment to global leadership or competence for it following last year's botched Afghanistan withdrawal. They are also experienced whiplash from a Trump administration that trashed the nuclear deal with Iran to a Biden administration they feel is pursuing it without sufficiently factoring in Tehran's regional aggression. In all my travels, many travels to the Mideast over the years, I've never heard this level of frustration from Mideast government officials with American policymakers. And we didn't have the problems we're having now during the prior administration, but it just shows you how quickly things can change. He continues, what has been eroding now for some years is U.S. leaders' commitment to defend, uphold, and advance that expanded international order, what Kissinger called an inexorably expanding cooperative order of states, observing common rules and norms, embracing liberal economic systems, forswearing territorial conquest, respecting national sovereignty, and adopting a participatory and democratic systems of government. In the Middle East, countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE that were once our closest allies now are hedging their bets. And then he goes on, he has to make a comment about Trump challenging the election. Beyond that, he says, our Mideast friends resent the Biden administration's characterization of the emerging global contest as one pitting democracy versus authoritarianism. And then he says, to shape the future world, the U.S. and Europe must first need to reverse the trajectory of Western and democratic decline in Ukraine. The rest will need to follow. In fact, what Kemp does is he says that how this new world order emerges and comes together after this Ukrainian crisis will depend on whether Ukraine wins. He says that. And so everybody's kind of struggling. The world's in turmoil. But just understand that they're trying to establish or reestablish a global order. And there's a lot of opinions out there as to how this is going to play out. Some interesting things that have come about, though, is that despite the sanctions on Russia, the value of the ruble today, I believe, exceeds what it did when the day before the Russian invasion, which I think was on February 24th of this year. So the ruble the value of it went way down, but now it's recovered to what it was before the invasion. And then this also from Bloomberg that because of the increase in the price of gas and oil, that Russia may realize a $321 billion windfall if they keep their gas and oil flowing. And right now it appears that that's going to happen. So I'll talk more about that. There's a lot of things that are concerned with that. There's, what kind of order is going to come out of this? Who's going to take control? It leads to a lot of possibilities, a lot of which I think are related to Bible prophecy. But we'll just kind of have to see how this goes. But you can kind of see that people are looking for someone to come in and lead this order. The Arabs themselves, they're looking for, particularly the Sunni Arab countries, they're looking for a strong horse that will come in and protect them from the Iranians. And so they're looking to China, they're looking to Russia, they're looking to the United States, but none of those things seem to be coming together, and now they're looking at Israel. At a time when Israel, and I'll talk more about this on Sunday as well, Israel's government is on the verge of collapse, which means that they will appoint a interim caretaker prime minister and government That probably will be, the prime minister will be Yair Lapid, who's currently serving as the foreign minister, and then they will have elections. What happened was that one of the people in the governing coalition essentially left the coalition. She was part of Naftali Bennett's party. So now what was a 61 to 59 parliamentary majority by this coalition now looks to be 60-60. And so the question is, they're going to have another round of elections. And what does that mean? Does anybody have enough ability to put together a coalition that would survive more than 6 or 8 months, or however long this one has been in place? So now I'm going to talk about Yuval Noah Harari. This is a screenshot from the first clip I ever played of him back in February of 2018. He was speaking at Davos. I'll play a couple clips from that talk, but I also want to set up where he's coming from. He is an atheist. He is gay. He lives with his husband, partner. I think they have a couple children. He's been a historian at of Middle Ages history at Tel Aviv University. He sort of burst on the scene back in 2014, 2015 when he published a book. He's now published several books. I'll show you pictures of those in just a moment. Well, here they are. One is called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. Sapiens, his first book, I believe, A Brief History of Humankind. And then his more recent book is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. So he did talks related to the last book, the 21 Lessons book, at Davos in 2020. And so the Homo Deus book, I believe, had just come out before the 2018 Davos conference that you'll hear a clip of in a moment. It's interesting, what's on the cover of Homo Deus. You see it's a digital fingerprint with a chip in it. It's a very interesting thing because he's about the merging of technology and humanity and data and artificial intelligence. He has given talks everywhere. He gave a talk at Google. These are talks at Google back in January of 2015. I suppose we could title the segment A Brief History of Yuval Harari. But he did a TED Talk back in 2014, and it was talking about, you'll kind of get the grasp of it. So you need to understand he's an atheist, believes strongly in evolution, but he believes that humans now have the technological capability to guide evolution. But I want you to see the digs that he takes at Christianity in religions in general, and Christianity in particular. Here is from his 2014 TED Talk in Israel.
Humans cooperate flexibly in large numbers because humans can create imagined realities together. All other animals use their communication system in order to describe reality. A chimpanzee can say, "Look, there is a lion, run away." Or, "Look, there is a banana, let's take it." Humans can use their language not only to describe reality, but also to create new realities, to create fiction. A human can say, "Look, there is a lion," or "Look, there is a banana." But a human can also say, "Look, there is a God above the clouds, and if you don't do what I tell you to do, God will punish you." And if you believe this fictional story, then you will do what you are told to do. And this is the secret behind large-scale human cooperation.
So again, you see him sort of, he mentions this a number of times in his talks over the years, the God above the clouds. And He sort of says it in this very dismissive way. Now, this is a talk. I had not really seen this one until this morning as I was sort of researching and doing some more background on him. This is a talk that he gave, talks at Google back in January of 2015, talking about his book. He got a gushing introduction from the person, and this is just a very brief clip from that. You can find all of this. Just Google him, search for him on YouTube, and you'll come up with all sorts of videos. I mean, I could go for hours about him, the things that are concerned. There's a lot of times where he sort of acts like he's really concerned about where all of this is going with technology and AI and that sort of thing. But then he also talks about it in terms like he's really in on it, like what they really want to do. And he really is, I think, providing a lot of the philosophical basis for what's happening. But listen to this talk that he gave at Google. There'll be an introductory part, and then I'll jump back to later in his talk. But listen to what he says about Silicon Valley and how he views what technology is doing.
It's a pleasure to be here also, not only to visit Ran and Ariel, but also to be in Silicon Valley, which for me is a kind of special place as a historian. As a historian, I focus mainly on the history of ideas, ideology, mythology, religion. And I think that the most interesting place in the world today, in religious terms, is Silicon Valley. Not the Middle East, not Syria or Afghanistan or Israel or Jerusalem, but Silicon Valley. This is where the new religions that will take over the world are being formulated. It's not an electronic algorithm, but what's the difference?
Well, let's go back and listen to that again, because I think it's very important, and we'll go into the part where he talks about algorithms and that type of thing, and understand that he's really into these algorithms. So here we go.
Silicon Valley, which for me is a kind of special place as a historian. As a historian, I focus mainly on the history of ideas, ideology, mythology, religion. And I think that the most interesting place in the world today, in religious terms, is Silicon Valley. Not the Middle East, not Syria or Afghanistan or Israel or Jerusalem, but Silicon Valley. This is where the new religions that will take over the world are being formulated. It's not an electronic algorithm, but what's the difference? The mathematics is the same. The calculations are basically the same. What's the matter? How it is actually? Why does it matter how it is done? The second fallacy, which is part of it, is that most of these movies, not all of them, but most of them imagine it as a kind of war between humans and computers or humans and robots, when the far more likely scenario, which we are already seeing now, is not a war but a wedding. We are talking about a merger of the two kinds of algorithms, the biochemical and the electronic, not a struggle, or not necessarily. The life sciences are currently, most of them, have this dogma that, okay, we don't know how to explain it, but in 20 or 30 or 50 years, with more experiments, more knowledge, we will understand how electrochemical signals are transformed into subjective experiences. But at present, in 2015, this is just dogma. Still today, we don't have a clue how electrochemical patterns can turn into subjective experiences. Maybe the life sciences have got it wrong. Maybe humans and other animals are not reducible to algorithms. This is an open question. However, in historical terms, it's not as important as you might think, because a religion or an ideology does not have to be correct in what it says in order to take over the world. We have many cases previously in history when religions and ideologies, which said what we think today to be completely erroneous things about the world, nevertheless managed to take it over. In scientific terms, the story, for example, that Christianity tells about the world, how the world was created, how humans were created, how things work in the world, it's not true. It's simply not true, at least according to science. But this did not prevent Christianity from taking over most of the world. So you don't need truth to take over the world. Similarly, with these new data religions, maybe they are based on a misunderstanding of life, but this will not necessarily prevent them from taking over the world.
So, I mean, you should stop it and back it up and replay that again. I mean, he says Christianity is not true. Christianity took over the world. But, look, we don't need truth to take over the world because Christianity wasn't true and it took over the world. But, maybe the tech people, they don't have the truth either, but they don't need the truth and they will take over the world. I mean, I think you need to understand that there is the religious, philosophical aspect of what he's saying is deeply, deeply disturbing. It is anti-God, it is anti-Christ, it is anti-religion, it is anti-truth. He does not care about that. And it really, once you get away from those things, the source of truth and that type of thing, it just becomes about mere power. So he can say all the time, for example, after the COVID pandemic, he wrote this article for Financial Times, Lessons from a Year of COVID. And in this article, he essentially says, well, we need to be careful. We don't want the tech people to take over, and we should only use this technology for good. But what's the basis for that truth or his belief? Is it the algorithm that he believes in, that he seems to worship? It was interesting after his talk at Google. I just looked at the first couple comments. One of the best teachers in the world, without a doubt. Certainly much here to learn from the course, and it's all for free. These people restore my faith in humankind. And you see that what you see there in that comment is really what is this humanistic, tech, data-centered religion that drives Yuval Harari. And what I fear drives, and what I'm pretty certain drives, people that want to establish this next world order that they talk about. So it's interesting, as I said, Glenn Beck put it up and he got flagged for misinformation for, out of context, New World Order, it's a conspiracy theory, that sort of thing. But it's interesting as you go and you can, if I just played the clips, or you go to the World Government Summit YouTube channel and look at the clips, none of the clips are flagged with a conspiracy theory because they're using the term New World Order. So they're allowed to talk about the New World Order and how it's emerging and how we're at an inflection point. Everybody uses the same language. Fred Kemp, inflection point. Becky Anderson from CNN, inflection point. Joe Biden a week before, inflection point. And then they all talk about the liberal world order, New World Order, that sort of thing. And you also notice Henry Kissinger seems to be showing up again too. So back in 2018, this was the first clip I ever played of Yuval Harari. I think it was an update that I put up. I believe it was February 4th, 2018. But you can see he's been around for a while. By the way, his books that he's written, I believe the first two books, Homo Deus and Sapiens, have sold somewhere between 35 and 40 million copies worldwide. So this man is very, very influential. And you will see Becky Anderson when she introduces him, or not Becky Anderson, but one of the editors at the Financial Times who introduced him at Davos 2018 said, I've been reading this guy, and I saw him in a room with Angela Merkel, and she had read him and that type of thing. So he's very influential. So you understand what he's doing. So here's a couple clips from him from Davos 2018 World Economic Forum. His title of this talk was, Will the Future Be Human? It's interesting, and I don't know if I have this clip in it, but during this, so I'll just tell you what he said. What he said was, he's a medieval Middle Ages historian. That's his area of expertise. And he said, the interesting thing is that back in and I'm paraphrasing him, back in the Middle Ages, the serf, the lowest person in human society class-wise, provided value to the lord of the manor. He cleaned out the stalls. He helped tend the fields, that sort of thing. But he said now we're coming to a point where, in his Financial Times article, he makes the point that, it used to take farm labor to harvest fields and stuff, and now you get one combine, you program it with the right kind of chip, and one combine can do multiple fields, and you don't really need to worry about the human factor. And in his talk in Davos, he said, what happens when these people have no redeeming value for humanity? And I think it's an important thing to talk about. I appreciate him bringing it up, but the question is someone who believes that the new religion is going to come from the technocracy of Silicon Valley, is that the one you want making those decisions? So I agree with the language. We really are at an inflection point, a prophetic inflection point, if you will. So here's Yuval Harari from Davos 2018.
Within a century or two, Earth will be dominated by entities that are more different from us than we are different from Neanderthals or from chimpanzees. Because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. These will be the main products of the economy, of the 21st century economy. Not textiles and vehicles and weapons, but bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Those who control the data control the future not just of humanity, but the future of life itself. Because today, data is the most important asset in the world. In ancient times, land was the most important asset. And if too much land became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into aristocrats and commoners. Then in the modern age, in the last 2 centuries, machinery replaced land as the most important asset. And if too many of the machines became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into classes, into capitalists and proletariats. Now data is replacing machinery as the most important asset. And if too much of the data becomes concentrated in too few hands, humanity will split not into classes, it will split into species, into different species. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. There is a lot of talk these days about hacking computers and email accounts and bank accounts and mobile phones, but actually we are gaining the ability to hack human beings. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need 2 things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. Not data about what I buy or where I go, but data about what is happening inside my body and inside my brain. Until today, nobody had the necessary computing power and the necessary data to hack humanity. Even if the Soviet KGB or the Spanish Inquisition followed you around everywhere, 24 hours a day, watching everything you do, listening to everything you say, still, they didn't have the computing power and the biological knowledge necessary to make sense of what was happening inside your body and brain and to understand how you feel and what you think and what you want. But this is now changing because of 2 simultaneous revolutions. On the one hand, advances in computer science, and especially the rise of machine learning and AI, are giving us the necessary computing power. And at the same time, advances in biology, and especially in brain science, are giving us the necessary understanding, biological understanding, you can really summarize 150 years of biological research since Charles Darwin in 3 words. Organisms are algorithms. This is the big insight of the modern life sciences, that organisms, whether viruses or bananas or humans, they are really just biochemical algorithms. And we are learning how to decipher these algorithms. Now, when the 2 revolutions merge, when the infotech revolution merges with the biotech revolution, what you get is the ability to hack human beings.
Well, that's packed with a lot of things that should be very concerning. And you layer on top of this CRISPR technology, where they think we can actually go in and edit genes and DNA and that sort of thing. This is Tower of Babel type stuff. And the question is, how long does God let it go on before he intervenes? I think this is a question we need to ask and look at. Here's another clip from Davos 2018, Yuval Noah Harari.
We are used to thinking about democracy and dictatorship in ethical or political terms. But actually, these are 2 different methods to process information. Democracy processes information in a distributed way. It distributes the information and the power to make decisions between many institutions and individuals. Dictatorship, on the other hand, concentrates all the information and power in one place. Now, given the technological conditions of the 20th century, distributed data processing worked better than centralized data processing, which is one of the main reasons why democracy outperformed dictatorship, and why, for example, the US economy outperformed the Soviet economy. But this is true only under the unique technological conditions of the 20th century. In the 21st century, new technological revolutions, especially AI and machine learning, might swing the pendulum in the opposite direction. They might make centralized data processing far more efficient than distributed data processing. And if democracy cannot adapt to these new conditions, then humans will come to live under the rule of digital dictatorships. And already at present, we are seeing the formation of more and more sophisticated surveillance regimes throughout the world, not just by authoritarian regimes, but also by democratic governments. The US, for example, is building a global surveillance system, while my home country of Israel is trying to build a total surveillance regime in the West Bank. For 4 billion years, nothing fundamental changed in the basic rules of the game of life. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds. Science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm. I think maybe, again, to try and focus it, you talked about different exchanges in the world. Maybe the most important exchange in this respect will be in healthcare. the big battle over what we today call privacy will be between privacy and health. Do you give access to what is happening inside your body and brain in exchange for far better healthcare? And my guess is that health will win, hands down. People will give up their privacy in exchange for healthcare, and maybe in many places they won't have a choice. I mean, they won't even get insurance if they are unwilling to give access to what is happening inside their bodies.
Right. So another big exchange that will not involve money, but still be very, very important. Last quick question, and then we must wrap, sadly. When it was all about land control, the elites essentially had feudalism. We called it feudalism in history. Mm-hmm. When it was all about the industrial machines, we had capitalism and Marxism. Have you thought of a word to describe this new world of dataism?
Yeah, I try dataism, but I don't know. I mean, words have their own life, and what word catches and what word doesn't, it's really a coincidence.
Well, maybe answers on the postcard if anyone in the hall has an idea, or tweet it out, or send them an email, or whatever digital communication you like. But anyway, on behalf of everyone here, I can see from the faces, people are actually not looking at their mobile phones. They're actually looking at you. They are rapt. That is quite an achievement. And thank you very much indeed for both inspiring us and terrifying us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you.
Right. I mean, this is, there's a lot to unpack. And, so to put this into the prophetic context that we talk about a lot, the mark of the beast, the rising system, and you see that in many respects, Yuval Harari is a prophet for this new order that people want to put in place. I don't think there's any other way to describe it. Is he what we would call the false prophet? A lot of what he says is false, but a lot of what he says is predicting at least what appears to be things that are going to happen and unfold in the near time. And as the moderator said there at the end, thank you for informing us and terrifying us. It does have a terrifying aspect to it because of what happens when it's in the wrong hands. And you notice he also said about the fact that we'll reach this, we'll have this war between privacy and health, and he thinks health will win. Now, this was 2018. And it was only 2 years later that Davos had a meeting, but he spoke at. But then it quickly transmitted or changed into this pandemic that we've been under for the last 2 years, over 2 years now. And the question is, was he right? Was he a prophet when he said that privacy would lose out to health? Health would control. In fact, what they did was they used health to control, but a lot of people, went along with it willingly. And this is the state of the world. In 2020, he went to the Athens Democracy Forum, sponsored by the New York Times, and he was asked questions he had some comments about surveillance and that sort of thing, and this is what he had to say.
No, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. Because really we haven't seen anything yet. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge. They are merging around, I would say, the biometric sensor. It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all.
Well, I'll have some more comments to talk about him on Sunday, but I think this is it's expected in the sense that we knew something like this was coming. I don't think we really understood fully until we've gotten into the middle of it exactly what it was going to be like. And people have been working at this for over 100 years. I mean, the Dulles brothers and others were trying to establish a world order. And now we see it, and we see this conflict in Ukraine. Now, I'm just going to bring up, this is a little bit of a preview of Sunday. This is an article at Israel Hayom. Israel concerned about the democratic shift that Iran is moving closer to the northern border of Israel, particularly the Golan Heights. And I just saw something this morning from the UN that they're really coming after Israel on the Golan Heights. And Israel itself is concerned about the security situation in the border areas of Syria because of the shifting demographics. What's happening in the demographics is somewhat similar to what's happening with the demographics in Ukraine. At the beginning of the Syrian civil war in March 2011, 10 years and a month ago, the population of Syria was just under 22 million. About 60% of the population were Sunni Muslims. About 10% or so were Alawite Muslims, which is sort of related to Shiite Muslims, and 4% were Shiites. Now, Iranian Islam is mainly, at least the mullahs that control it, are Shiite Islam. So that's why there's this sort of religious affinity, well, I don't think he's very religious at all, between Assad and Iran. But Russia came in, and so Syria had about 22 million people. Syria's population now, at least under the areas controlled by Assad, and that's most of it, is about 10 million people. So that means half of the country does not live today where it lived 10 years ago. And the mix of it has changed. They got rid of the Sunnis, and they've put in place more control for the Alawites and the Shia. The Alawites now are 40% of the population of Syria. And the Shiite Muslims, they say, are 10%. I think I take it back. It's 30% Alawite, 10% Shia, but I think that number is probably underestimated. Back in 2016, and so I've got a clip of General Breedlove, who was the NATO Supreme Commander. He's testified before Congress about the Syrian situation. Again, he was the Supreme Commander of NATO, and you can reach all your conclusions whether he's telling the truth or not. I think what he's telling is true as to what happened with the Russian involvement in Syria resulted in a major demographic shift in Syria. That has prophetic implications. What's going on now, though, in Ukraine is a similar demographic shift. Anywhere from 25% to a third of Ukrainians don't live where they lived 6 weeks ago. And a lot of people are leaving. A lot of people are leaving Russia. So there's these huge demography problems everywhere. China has a demography problem, but Ukraine probably has the biggest demography problem of anybody in Europe outside of Russia. I mean, they're both in bad shape. So it appears that what Putin has been able to do, he's been able to go into certain areas, pretty much destroy the infrastructure, and people have left because they don't have any place to live. This is exactly what happened in Syria. I'm going to play you a clip of General Breedlove's opinion as to what was going on in Syria after the Russian involvement, and that is overlaid by the clips of the destruction. You'll see Damascus, you'll see an area called Ghouta, and you will also see Aleppo, which was the largest city. It may still be the largest city in Syria, but you will see. So the first images you'll see in this video that's playing behind General Breedlove is what has happened to Syria. And I want you to say is compare what Syria looks like with what you see about areas of Ukraine. And we'll talk more about the Ukrainian war on Sunday, because I think there is certainly a parallel, and the Ukrainian war has implications for the Middle East. Everybody agrees with that. And it's got the world order in disarray right now, and people are trying to piece it back together. And you saw articles about that. So here's General Breedlove talking at the in front of Congress back in 2016.
Russia's entry into the fight in Syria has wildly exacerbated the problem, changing the dynamic in the air and on the ground. Despite public pronounces to the contrary, Russia has done little to counter Daesh, but a great deal to bolster the Assad regime and its allies. And together, Russia and the Assad regime are deliberately weaponizing migration from Syria in an attempt to overwhelm European structures and break European resolve. What I have seen in Syria, in places like Aleppo and others, are what I would call absolutely indiscriminate, unprecise bombing, rubblizing major portions of a city that do not appear to me to be against any specific military target, because the weapons they're using have no capability of hitting specific targets. They are unguided, dumb weapons. And what I have seen in the Assad regime from the beginning, when they started using barrel bombs, which have absolutely no military utility, they are unguided and crude, and what are they designed to do is terrorize the public and get them on the road. Get them on the road, make them a problem for Europe, to bend Europe to the will of where they want them to be. And so I see a continuing pattern in Aleppo and other places of this indiscriminate use of military capability, that all I can determine from it is the goal is to get more people on the road and make them a problem for someone else to bend the will of those being affected.
Well, you saw some of the clips there of, areas of Damascus. We talk about the prophecy in Isaiah 17. If it's a future prophecy, has Damascus been destroyed and ceased from being a city? And I think you can say right now that large portions of the city have been destroyed. I mean, the destruction is just unbelievable. That's Damascus. This is Aleppo. I think General Breedlove was correct that it's been rubbleized. And now this is happening in Ukraine. And we can argue about whether it's right or wrong. The fact of the matter is human beings are suffering, and people are dying and going into a crisis eternity. And we need to take the opportunity to warn people about what's coming. So more Sunday about these and other topics. If you have time, I would highly recommend that you go to YouTube, watch Caroline Glick's interview with David Goldman that was just released this morning. Also appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Rumble. I don't know if I'll post this one on Rumble, but in any event, very interesting times that we live in. Some things that, admittedly are disturbing, even terrifying, but they were what the prophets told us the world would be like before the Lord returned. So thanks for watching, and God bless. We'll talk to you on Sunday.